Well, I want to put a plug in for the JPFO. I actually used to be a member, and I just signed up again for 2 years. I was a member for some years. I'm not a member of the NRA. I'm actually a member of Gun Owners of America. I think the NRA is kind of lame in some ways, but they got more numbers. That's the thing that counts. And I'm going to highlight some of the differences between Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership and the NRA. They actually put an open letter on their site, which I'm going to give full credit to them. You know, Aaron Zellman, who wrote the letter, and he wrote it to Ted Nugent, and it's about basically, you know, they agree with Ted Nugent, but they don't agree with the NRA. That's what it is. Also want to bring this point up too because you know, there's one thing actually I think Alex Jones did come up with right. I actually follow his channel. I don't like a lot of stuff he puts out, but this I think he had right, correct. Did Obama have Scalia, Judge Scalia, killed? It would not have been Obama specifically, but you know, it would have been the group with the agenda to disarm America, the group with the agenda to basically stop all the type of decisions that are on the side of the Constitution and individual rights. But primarily, the number one decision is about, you know, the Second Amendment specifically. And it's ludicrous to think that the Second Amendment is about, it gives the military the right to bear arms, the military and the national police to bear arms. Sure, you know what? They're smoking crack, but you know what? They probably are smoking crack if they think that. But you know, if there was no Second Amendment, it doesn't matter because you know it's an inalienable right. It doesn't matter what the hell they say. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to argue with them. Period. You know, we got the right to. You know, if you don't want the right to bear arms, fine. I don't give a shit. You know, some people say, "What do you need a gun for? Just you afraid of people?" No, but you know, it's the same reason. Why do you need? Why do you need a computer to freaking you know, do spell check and you watch your sentences? You know, it's a tool. Why do you need a car to drive someplace? It's a tool. Why do you need electronic transfers instead of freaking mailing in payments? It's a tool. You know, when the tool came out and you don't have it and somebody else has it, you got a problem. Now, I'm going to go over eventually what the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms stated and in its address to Ted Nugent. Now, it's not really about criticizing Ted Nugent. It's actually about criticizing the NRA for being lame. And I agree with, so I said, you know, I'm jumping back on board. Actually, I was a member of Gun Owners of America for a long period of time. Now, actually, I put this out a while ago. You can see that's their symbol, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. The Nazi-inspired Gun Control Act of 1968 needs to be repealed. I put this video out back January 15, 16, whatever. It's a while ago, probably. Oh, wait a minute. It was recent. It was 16. Wow. Time flies. I thought I did it a long time ago, but do so many videos I can't remember. But I also want to, well, anyway, just for another note here, because I know a lot of people like Trump, and I'm not really too much, I don't know what this guy's about exactly, but I'm going to throw it in here. This is the Donald Trump site, donaldtrump.com. Actually, the Jeb Bush site, he forgot to register it, so Donald Trump jumped on it. So when you type in the Jeb Bush site, it goes right to Donald Trump site. I was like, you know, hey, somebody's freaking thinking ahead here. So anyway, this is an open letter to Ted Nugent. The day I'll join the NRA. This is by Aaron Zellman, founder and director of Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Actually, I was an initial member. I actually have their books on. You know, that's why I put that video out about the Gun Control Act of 1968. It was inspired from Nazi law. And actually, the murder of JFK he was killed by Nazi elements, not the Lee Harvey Oswald scapegoat. I put that out for a reason. I don't know if it was going to be popular or what, but you know, I got to tell the truth instead of freaking try to play games to be popular. I know most people are freaking looking for giddy rumors and dumb shit on the internet, but let me just present this because, you know, I re-signed up for these guys for a couple years, and maybe I'll get a life membership later after that. So Aaron Zellman, of the Jews for the Firearms Preservation of Firearms Ownership is addressing Ted Nugent. Now, he's not criticizing Ted Nugent. He's criticizing the NRA. He goes, when the NRA announces from the rooftops that the police have no legal duty to protect the average American citizen, then he'll join. In other words, time after time, our courts have upheld that if Americans are really, it's up to them to protect themselves, that the police do not have a legal duty to protect you. It's not like the cops didn't show up in time, they weren't fast enough, I could sue them because they screwed up. No, it has nothing to do with that. You're the first line of defense against, protecting your livelihood, your property, and all that, and your family members. So they don't bring this up. The NRA doesn't bring this up. Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership does bring this up. He goes on. Aaron Zellman goes on to state, and like I says, I'll point to the link where the site is. When the NRA aggressively presses to abolish all concealed carry permit laws. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, concealed carry permit laws. Well, yeah, we need a concealed carry permits, but where the Jews for Preservation of Firearms says it's an unalienable right to self-defense, and it's been demoted to a revocable government-granted privilege. I agree, that's bullshit. To me, if you got a right to weapons, you should have a right to concealed carry without getting a permit from the government. Period. Unregistered concealed carry has been no big issue in both Alaska and Vermont for decades, and Arizona just passed an unregistered concealed carry legislation. I think it's another state too. So the NRA should be pushing for unregistered concealed carry. Now that makes them sound too extreme. So what? I think people that really disagree with these type of policies, they need to go to countries where, ISIS is thriving. And, you'll figure it out eventually. You'll figure it out eventually if you survive. This is the last beacon of hope here is the United States of America. And, I know there's a lot of crime out there. I'm going to ad lib on this. I know there's a lot of crime out there, but a lot of it's coming from drugs. Like I know there's a lot of things people talk about. Oh, Japan has a really low crime rate. They don't have any they have hardly any, gun crime or murders from crime. You know what? They got the strictest not gun laws. They got gun laws, but they also have the strictest drug laws. The Japanese government isn't bringing in all kinds of freaking drugs to their country to screw up the Japanese people like it's going on with the American government in cahoots with the freaking American banks. Most of the crimes in the United States are drug related. Most of them. And, without the drugs, well, the crime is going to dissipate drastically. It's not the guns per se. But that has a lot to do with why Japan has a very low incidence of crime with guns, not just because of gun control, but they got a low incidence of crime, period. As a matter of fact, the integrity of the Japanese people is like beyond what most people's are in most nations. I mean, people's have dropped wallets full of cash and got it back intact in Japan, in major cities. Try to have that happen in the United States. Go drop your wallet in New York. Go drop your wallet in Jersey City, Newark, Hoboken. Something, Elizabeth, whatever. So anyway, goes on to say, Aaron Zellman goes on to say, when the NRA calls for the complete and unconditional disbanding of the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms and Explosives, gun owners should be appalled at the NRA's leadership, where they're saying they're going along with these guys. Oh, we got to make tough laws and screw the freaking BATFE. The hell with them. I agree with that. You get rid of them. We don't need that shit. First off, when you're talking about alcohol and tobacco, why the hell you got a Department of Alcohol and Tobacco? That was because of what, the Al Capone thing with the prohibition. Well, that was all started over a scam by freaking Rockefeller in the first place. I got to even add this in here. We're going to wind up going too long on this, but I got to add this in here for people who don't know that. Why the hell did they even have prohibition in the first place? That's actually what made the BATFE created, partly. because of the alcohol sales. Well, the thing is, it came about because John D. Rockefeller didn't like the competition from the farmers for his standard crude oil because the farmers were selling alcohol to run in the cars. He didn't like that competition. He wanted to get rid of that competition. Actually, Henry Ford wanted, most of the fuel for the cars to come from agricultural products. But John D. Rockefeller didn't want that. He wanted just coming from his monopoly, Standard Oil. So what happened? He gave $4 million to a women's abolitionist movement to ban the sale and manufacture of alcohol on like religious grounds because it's doing this, it's doing that, but really what it was all about was to stop. The women's suffrage, the abolitionist movement was saying it was because they were, it was causing problems in the family, which is true. But then again, you know, somebody will find something no matter what. If they're a substance abuser, they'll find something else. But the thing is, when they banned the sale of alcohol and manufacture of alcohol, that gave John D. Rockefeller, Standard Oil, 100% of the market for the fuel for the cars. That's what it was about. And that's largely why this thing came about, the BATFE. It's, the NRA shouldn't be bullshitting around with these people. And JFPO is saying, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, is saying that instead of the NRA and the BATFE working together, they should instead be mortal enemies. Mortal enemies. True. I agree. All the way. Now, is it risky for me to say this? Yeah, what the hell, right? I mean, for crying out loud, what am I going to do? Cower every freaking time? And he also goes on to say, did you know that back during the administration of Ronald Reagan, President Reagan actually wanted to dismantle the then BATF. Who stopped them? The NRA. That would make a big difference right there. Without the stupid organization of freaking, we got to regulate this, we got to regulate that. Anyway, the NRA has publicly stated that it wants to work with the BATFE to punish the criminals' use of guns and blah, 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 Yeah, right. So, they're making it. That's why I'm not a member of the NRA. I was Gun Owners of America forever. And I was also Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership when they first came out. But, I guess I dropped the membership because I was thinking they don't have enough members to really, But the hell with it. I'm back in there again now because, when I see what's going on with Justice Scalia, I says, I know what's going on here. This is bullshit. Plus, I recently found out, well, I don't know about all the way back for sure, but I know that my great-grandfather was the illegitimate son of Duke Albert Edward, who later became King Edward VII, which I'm not trying to make some kind of big deal about it, because the other side of the liaison was a courtesan high-end hooker, right? So like I say, I'm part hooker, part royalty from way back. But the guy that was the father of Duke Albert Edward, allegedly, according to Greg Hallett, is Nathan Lionel Rothschild. So that make me part Jewish, which I'm kind of figuring I am, because I don't know why I get along with Jews so well. At least the guys that are in business, the guys that are like Trump guys. That's why I think Trump's full of shit, but anyway. That's kind of gigging on some of the Jewish business guys, but I know Trump could freaking lie like a rug, but he's still, I don't know what they're about. Well, I don't want to get on there with that shit. But anyway, the NRA soundly condemns and works tirelessly to abolish, when the NRA soundly condemns and works tirelessly to abolish the Gun Control Act of 1968, then I think now that's why I put that video out before, because I put it out, just here. The Nazi-inspired Gun Control Act of 1968 needs to be repealed. Now, I also went into what the Nazi-inspired assassination of JFK and Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. And that's why they passed a Nazi law, because Nazis killed the best freedom fighters we had in our country. So they passed a Nazi law to fix it, right? Oh, freaking yo-yos, man. So, in Nazi Germany, Jews were forced to identify themselves with a yellow star. So I'm going to have, I already got another one anyway from before. I'm going to have the lapel pin with the JFPO with the cross rifles on it, just like this. You know, it's like a lapel pin. It looks like that. I used to have it on my leather motorcycle jacket. I'll have it on my my field jacket from the USMC from before, and I'll just wear it on that. You know what the hell? I'll wear it on my black T-shirt. I'll wear it everywhere. I don't give a shit. I'm getting tired of this crap because I'm gonna push these guys a lot. And if you're Jewish and you don't like the JFPO, whatever it is, you know, Jews for Fire Preservation, JPFO, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, you don't like them, well, you know what? Not just don't join the freaking ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. Join, you know, go freaking full tilt. You know, in other words, join the Israeli army and be stationed here in the United States because you're going to need this shit because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. When ISIS takes control due to freaking Obama and his policies and all this other crap, and the next yo-yo that comes in there, we're going to have blanket freaking chaos. Definitely. No doubt about it, all right? You know, the Jewish Defense League, you know, something like that. You're going to have to be not screwing around. You know, when the NRA quit kowtows to authoritarian police department bureaucrats and takes a no-compromise stand against the increasing paramilitarization of our local and state and law enforcement agencies, then I'll join the NRA. You know, that's why I'm kind of turned off about the NRA, too. I was actually, you know, I stayed in with the Gun Owners of America. That they're no compromise. I figured I'd just stay with one. And I said, you know, I'm going back with these guys. I don't think they're that big, but the problem is, I'm going to try to make them bigger because now I got a little more voice on YouTube here. And when the NRA forcefully and persistently brings up the uncontestable fact that every major genocide, and you know, the 1968 Gun Control Act that's enshrined in our law in the United States is based upon the 1938 Nazi Gun Control Act. Ain't that wonderful, right? That's a fact. Brought in by, I think it was Senator Dodd, Connecticut. The Daddy Dodd, not the younger one. And that every major genocide of the 20th century was preceded by gun control policies. Disarmed millions become the victims of government-sponsored or condoned mass murder. Like, you know, I hate calling these people liberals because I'm a liberal, man. You know, liberal is a good word. They took that word and they're freaking myopic communist dictator assholes. You know, these ones that call themselves liberals. I think of myself as a liberal. I don't give a shit. You know, do whatever you want, man. A liberal is, it doesn't mean what it means today. You know, it's crazy the way they twisted the English language around. But, you know, they're doing that with the Second Amendment. I mean, why the hell would you freaking have a Bill of Rights guarantee people's individual rights specifically because they're afraid of the freaking encroachment of the federal powers and they're putting out, you know, I know it says a well-regulated militia being, God, I can't remember it right off the top of my head, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people shall not be infringed. The right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. But a regulated militia meant all the people, basically. Okay, basically everybody was capable of bearing arms. It's not, you know, that's actually if you go all the way back to ancient Rome in the Roman Republic, before it was an empire, and there was, you know, the mercenary forces later on that were employed in the Roman Empire was far different from the citizen farmer soldier. The independent, stand on your own ground farmer citizen that was self-sufficient, that, you know, temporarily took up arms to defend the nation. Anyway, the founders didn't pen the Second Amendment to protect us from muggers and rapists or burglars, you know. It's actually mainly to protect us from the government itself. People, oh, you're so scared of this. Well, why is the government freaking setting up freaking false flags like Sandy Hook in the Virginia shooting with, you know, little Missy? You know, that was another game. You know, why is the government doing that? What about Lavoy Filkram, you know, shot by 20 times. He gets out of the car. He's got a 6-shooter on his hip. He doesn't go for the 6-shooter on his hip. He doesn't go for any, he doesn't have any other weapons. You know, they tase him. And, you know, the Oregon State Police said hey, we were against what these other guys were doing. They were actually, but I don't know how much they're going to say beyond that. They shot him like 20 times. They shot the car about, 100 something times before they even fell into the snow. They shot at the car. That's why the car took off. That's why the car took off. You know that thing with Oregon? The car took off and it went into the preset trap up there on a highway with the snowbanks at 3 feet of snow on each side, and they had the blockade with the three cars. They had snipers in the trees. Before that happened, they actually shot. They stopped them. The guy put his hands in his head out the window. They shot at the car. That was a deliberate ploy to make them run, to run into the trap so they can kill them. And they shot the hell out of the car. If they weren't all laying on the floor, they would all have been dead, as it was when one of the other ones got hit. So the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, JPFO, and this is per Aaron Zellman. He says that Ted Nugent running for office gets an A+ grade from the NRA. That's the standard that they must start with. In other words, they agree with Ted Nugent. He says a lot of times the NRA is giving grades to people that are too high, and because these people are just telling them a lot of wonderful lies, and then they turn around and they stab them in the back. But for the most part, I don't want to be too critical of the NRA because they're the only game in town right now, because they're the only one with numbers. I wish the JPFO had the numbers of the NRA, and that's the purpose of this video. So. It's like sometimes people are always thinking, oh, the Jew. Well, you know what? On his site, if you look at what the JPFO says, the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership says on their site, you will read why, Jews in general are in error on gun control, because I know it is a fact that a lot of Jews are kind of for gun control in different manners, but a lot of these people are professional people. They don't own guns. They're not thinking about this stuff. They don't live out west corralling cattle and stuff, and they're far removed from the genocides of years past. Actually, if I look at Jewish history a little bit, I don't know much about Jewish history. I'm not going to tell you a lot about Jewish history, but I know there was times in the past where Jews did take up arms and they fought valiantly against overwhelming odds, and they got wiped out. And I actually have a theory about some of that type of stuff, because I have the same theory about Italy and Rome. It's like sometimes the best people got wiped out. The ones that stuck their neck out, that got wiped out, just like in Rome, just like what happened in Israel. And unfortunately, freaking Rome didn't work out right with the Second Temple and all that type of stuff. But as far as I'm going on a tangent here. I don't give a shit. But as far as what happened in Rome, with Julian the Apostate, the Emperor Julian, that was the guy I liked. The Christians, the Catholic or the Christian don't like him. He was the apostate. He was killing the Christians, and I was thinking, well, the Christians weren't freaking. They didn't want to fight for the empire. He was fighting against the Persians. He was fighting against the Parthians, which is the present day Persians are the Iranians. The Parthians are the Iraqis. He's fighting against them. He was leading his troops head on, and he got wounds a couple times, and he died of his wounds. It might have been helped along by some Christians that wanted him dead. And he was also gave orders to rebuild the temple. He had orders to rebuild, and there was construction going on in progress. So, if he lived, there would have been no problems today. Israel would be strong, and they'd be living over there. And that's the way I look at it. I don't know. See, maybe I am part Jewish, because I don't know why the hell I think like this. I don't know why I think like this, man. I know what people say about Jews, this and that and all this kind of crap. I know that, they're freaking shrewd. I know that. And maybe I'm too keened in on that shrewdness that I'm kind of worried about Trump. Make America great again. Well, he might be the bankruptcy president. Yeah, we're bankrupt. So what? We don't care. We don't owe you nothing. Clean slate. Too bad. Too bad. Goodbye. We can't pay you nothing. Anyway, sidetracking here. But anyway, this is a plug, basically. I signed up for them again. I'm like, the hell with this bullshit, man. I'm in with the JPFO again. I was initially, I think it was one of their very first members. I got their books about the genocides and things that happened in the past that would not have ever happened if um, they had gun if they didn't have gun registration and gun control. I mean, gun registration's bullshit, man. What did it do? Register freaking drill bits and stuff next? I mean, what did it do? I mean, come on. Register knives? I mean, in Germany, they probably do shit like that. I think they already do. Anything that fires a projectile, anything that, a kitchen knife, you got to register it. But, a kitchen knife ain't going to work when you got a bunch of paid goons coming in to freaking just take over. And, I mentioned this thing about Trump and bankruptcy. This is something that you want to think about what's going to happen when the U.S. does go bankrupt. What, we got a 4 point something trillion-dollar budget coming up with Obama, $19 trillion in debt already plus. When the U.S. goes bankrupt, guess what's going to be the collateral for the loan? Everything you own. Your warranty deed on your property and all that bullshit. They'll just give it to somebody else in some other country. Say, we own it. We own it. So, I'm not here to save the idiots, to tell you the truth. Actually, in a way, I'm almost thinking like a Jew, man. It's like, I'm my own freaking group, and I'm not worried about idiots. If most of the planets is a pile of idiots and they don't want to do things the right way, to hell with it. And I look at the JPFO as the element of Judaism that is really true Jews, because they're not Ginos. Gino is Jew in name only. You got to fight for your preservation, and to fight for your preservation, you don't stand up there and like hold your hand up and say, try to stop, the force of a tank or a bullet with your hand. You got to have something that can stop them. That's why you got to have the preservation of firearms ownership. No messing around. So, I don't know. I might be a life member of these guys next. But for now, I did a 2-year membership, and I'm gonna keep plugging these guys a lot, because now I realized. I think I'm going to point you this video too. Did Obama have Judge Scalia killed? This is one video. I think Alex Jones points out a lot of stuff about, the Poindexter guy, the democratically held freaking county, one of the few democratically held counties where, where Justice Scalia went to. Man, these guys got to hang around with me, man. Why the hell do they freaking hang around? They need to hang around with me. I'll protect them. Ain't no problem with that shit. I keep a freaking 10 gauge in my heel. No, I'm just kidding. That's something like that. You know what I mean? No messing around. So, anyway. And, the whole thing is to be shrewd. Me blatantly saying this shit is not really the shrewdest thing in the world. But, you got to support the right type of people. And, them freaking being, the NRA, I don't know. I don't want to criticize the NRA too much, because they're not as screwed up as the freaking ultra-communist liberal shitheads, that's for sure. But they don't go far enough in protecting our rights. That's why I was always a member of the Gun Owners of America. But, I don't know. I'm back in with the Jews for the preservation of firearms ownership, too. So, does that make me domestic terrorist? Yeah, why not? If you want to label me that, go right ahead. I'll label you a domestic Nazi. How's that, you fucking bastards? How's that? I'll tell you that right now. Because, you play that label game, I'll tell you what the hell you are. And, because I already know how these weasels are, To me, I look at a gun like, gun. What is that? It's a power tool. If we're going to trim some trees, boom, boom, boom. You knock down that branch, I could do that too. I don't really think of nothing about it, but, people freak out too much and they watch too many movies. That's one of their problems too. And most of the movies are total bullshit. So just leave you with that.